tell us in a nutshell your biog, really.
Okay, yeah, cool. Hi, everyone. So yeah, like Naomi said, my name's Ben. So I set up Wiser back in 2013 with 3 others. I had a bit of an interesting journey from school to uni to a job, most notably because I missed out quite a major part of that, and that was uni. I didn't actually choose to go to university. I was always interested in technology and creative when I was younger, probably spent more time in my bedroom learning how to design and code things than I did going out and chatting with friends. So you can make your own conclusions about what kind of person that's made me now. But I went from school and I moved actually straight down to London about a week after I finished my A-levels. And I was in a kind of a weird mixed job at the Cabinet Office, working in the government, doing some digital work. And then I met 2 of the guys that I set up the company with, and that was kind of like mid 2013. So I always knew that I wanted to do something that was in the creative sphere. I think when you are a teenager, you don't really know what that necessarily means. You don't know the career you could then move that into. But I knew that I wanted to do something in that area. And I'd actually been on a bit of a journey of the problem that Wiser tries to fix today. And the reason we set up the company in the first place was, I think, that whole process from going for, and probably one of the reasons why you guys are dialing in today and getting a bit of advice about your careers, is it's not really like a path that's laid out for everyone. It's quite tricky to know which direction you should move in. You don't really get the right advice from people, and it's difficult to know who to speak to. So I kind of went through that process of going from school to maybe or maybe not going to university, and then moving into the world of work, not really knowing which way I was going. So Wiser started to kind of solve that problem between relationships between students and graduates and companies. And what we found out was, after not a long period of time, when we spoke to a lot of people in companies that were trying to hire young people, it was actually almost even more difficult for those people to find the young people as it was for young people to get a job in those companies. So we just learned about this whole industry inside recruitment and what we call employer branding. So the creative work that I do at Wiser today, I manage a team of creatives that are building brands to help companies hire people. So we kind of manage those 2 relationships on either side, and we've been doing that for 6 years now. The company is 90 people. As you would imagine, most of them are sat at home at the moment. And it's kind of split down the middle, what we call creative and recruitment. So when we go and speak to people, we don't say we're a creative agency, nor do we say we're a recruitment agency. We say that we're this kind of weird mix of the 2. So literally half of the office are creatives. So people that look at web design, filmography, graphic design, copywriting, research, and then the other side of the business are literally recruitment consultants. So they speak to people every day, students and graduates, and they find the right companies for them to go into. And the reason why that's been really good for us is we can be that kind of one point of contact for a company. If they want to hire anyone, we can help them look really good in front of the kind of people that they want to hire, and we can also actually help them get the people to get into the jobs in the first place. So yeah, it's been a really, really weird journey for me. I'll tell you a bit more as we go on about like how I kind of got there. But yeah, going from school straight to London, setting up a company, it's not really the typical route. Probably quite a lot of luck involved there, I'm not going to lie. But it's been a really interesting journey for me. And yeah, I'll hand over to Hattie, who obviously work alongside.
Yeah, so I work with Ben. I'm the research director at Wiser, and I've been there 2 years. I did do the uni bit. I studied English at university, but a little bit like Ben, I didn't really know what I was going to do with that. And when I left university, all I really knew was that I liked telling stories. I liked the kind of language and what influence it could have in advertising. I look back at some of my essays from university, and they were all focused on advertising and the power of language and stuff like that. I really enjoyed it, and I came out and first graduated, I wanted to go into a job with a load of purpose. So I was like, well, I should work for a charity. So I got a job working for a charity initially, and I loved it, but I realized, like, oh my goodness, there's no money here, and I kind of need money to get ahead and build a career. So I then went back to the drawing board a little bit, and I was like, well, I like telling stories, I like advertising, and I like, I think I know what branding is, so I'll apply for loads of branding kind of graduate schemes. And there's a few big companies like WPP and Publicis that own a lot of smaller branding agencies or advertising and creative agencies. And WPP ran what still is like a really, really top graduate scheme. So I applied for it. I failed. So I failed at that, and I went to the final round and they told me to go away and get more experience. So I was like, okay, went back, applied again and failed again. And I was like, oh man, this really sucks. And eventually I actually contacted one of the job interviewers, and I'll go into a little bit more detail, I think, around like how not to get too like low if you don't get the first job offer. I contacted them and just said I really enjoyed our conversation. Like if there's ever, you know, a job going at the smaller branding agency that you work at, like I'll do anything for it. And that's how I kind of got into branding. I was mainly focused on consumer branding initially. So that's, you know, everything to do with I guess like positioning products and brands in a more like appealing way to people who would buy them. And then I just met Ben and the other three founders almost by chance. Like they found my profile on LinkedIn and I thought these guys seemed crazy. I also, when I had my first meeting with Ben, I was like, oh my goodness, how is this like basically like 24-year-old running a company of his own? Like I have to go and work for them. So I moved over into employer branding now, and I head up the research and insights teams. So do all of the analysis, kind of like groundwork before handing over campaign ideas to Ben and his creative teams, who then make it beautiful and take it out into the world. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell. Sorry, a bit more than a nutshell.
No, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. And there are lots of things that we can pick up on later. As you said, I need to remember them all. So Ben, it'd be really interesting to know how your role within the company fits. So what your team does, how it fits within the kind of what the company delivers.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, my role title is Chief Creative Officer. So we have 4, I guess, like C-level people in the company and the 4 founders. So my business partner, Finn, who incidentally I live with and have done since we started the company, which is probably one of the reasons why we've moved so quickly, and that can get a little intense at times. But Finn's the CEO, Omar is the COO, which is the Chief Operating Officer, and Ari is this CFO, which is Chief Financial Officer, and I'm the CCO, so Chief Creative Officer, lots of C's in there. We have a really interesting dynamic as 4 people, and I think each of us are very, very different, which is why it kind of works well as a team. As my role title suggests, creative is obviously the thing that I look at the most. A Chief Creative Officer in a company that's not a creative agency, I guess, is specifically focused on the brand of the company itself. So let's say you were picking what's a good example? Let's say Apple. You know, they're quite a good company. Apple have a chief creative officer, but that person would only be focused on the brand of Apple and all the creative that Apple come out with, and maybe the marketing agencies that they work with, and how they would build the brand and the future of the brand. In a creative agency, obviously, my main role is looking over all of the creative projects that we're building and the brands we're building for our clients, and also our own brand as well. So like Hattie was saying, the way that we structure things very much like a research-led approach. So I think after doing creative for a while, we realized that the best way to make really good creative is to do your homework and do it properly. So go into a company and actually really learn what they're about before you go and build creative. And I think that that's probably something that all of you guys can take forward as a how to put yourselves across as creative, or how to talk about your own creative process. Always talk about research first, because when we didn't do that, we would just go in and we'd be using our own opinions and what we think would look good. But sometimes in a creative process, your own opinion, and maybe even sometimes the opinion of the client, actually matters the least. What matters the most is the people that are going to be seeing the creative, your audience at the other end. So we take a very research-led approach on things. We go into a company, we learn everything there is to know about a business, speak to all the different people, find out about the business, how it operates, what's good, what's not good, and where it's going in future. And then we will build creative campaigns which match that and will inspire people to come towards that company in future based on whatever proposition we found out inside that business. So anytime we build a creative project of any sort, I need to try and have my relatively watchful eye over it to make sure that it's at a certain level of quality, but also that we're constantly coming up with new ideas and new case studies. I think Anyone that's seen work that come out of a creative agency before knows that creative agencies are usually just only as good as their last case study. So it's very important that each time you build a new project, whether we're talking about like coursework here, whether we're talking about a creative agency, you always need to demonstrate that your most recent case study is your best, because it just shows that kind of constant improvement path. So I guess if I was to like give myself some like goals generally of what I want to do, is make sure that we're constantly improving our work. The last thing I'll say, and it's just to give you guys a bit of context around like when I talk about employer branding, and Hattie talked about consumer branding, what we mean by that. I think a lot of people think that a company just has one brand. So go back to Apple, for example, there's a big Apple logo. It's the Apple brand. There it is up there. That's just one brand. But actually a brand can kind of flex to each different audience depending on who's looking at it. So Apple will have their consumer audience, the people that look at their products and buy laptops and phones and iPads and everything that they sell. Then you'll have their investors and corporate clients. They'll be looking at Apple from a perspective of how they're performing as a company, how many of those laptops and iPads are they selling. And then the last set, there's lots of different sets, but the last main set is going to be people that might work for Apple, or people that actually work for Apple at the moment, the employees of the company. So we focus purely on that third category, making the Apple brand, or we don't work with Apple yet, I'd love to work with Apple, but how we make the Apple brand appealing to current employees and potential employees, to make sure that their best people stay at the business and they can inspire future people to come in. So when we talk about consumer branding, employer branding, that's kind of the area that we focus in. So it's the same process, consumer branding, but just focused on the employee side of things. And one of the reasons I think that, or one of the things that I've tried to do, and one of the things that's pushed Wiser forward quite a lot, is we are taking a very consumer branding led approach on employer branding. And in our industry, it's usually quite boring. So we're building career sites, careers videos, the kind of companies that are usually building that sort of work. They're not very innovative. They're not very creative. They don't have very good people working in them. So the stuff that comes out the back is not very inspirational. So it's quite good that we're kind of leading from the front in our industry, and we're trying to think of an employer brand campaign, something that would get someone to work at a company, careers for Apple, for example, to be just as good as a TV advert about the next iPad. So yeah, in short, anything creative or anything that looks pretty, like hopefully that should be the things that I watch over and make sure that they're good.
Fantastic. And Hattie, can you tell us a bit more about, exactly, I'm just going to admit somebody else in, your area of the company, your team, and where it fits, and also kind of the different roles within your team?
Yeah, for sure. So my team sits really close to Ben's team on the creative side. So research, I guess I'll talk about it in terms of like how a project comes into the company. So our sales team will go out and kind of get a lead with, I'm going to use a different example, we'll say Kraft Heinz or who else could we pick? Maybe Vodafone. So they will kind of like get a lead with Vodafone, and that project will come in through the sales team, and they'll introduce the team of researchers, which is my team. And what we'll do is we will kind of, I guess there's a few different roles in the team, but we've got a research and insights manager, and then we've got different research roles. So you can either be more focused on the data analysis side, like really like to kind of like send out surveys to find out, I guess, like the numbers behind like how many people apply for jobs, like what the demographic stats are, like how many male, female people are applying for companies and jobs, and kind of that data side. Or you can be more interested in the kind of face-to-face interviewing of current talent in a business. So as Ben said, we'll go into a business and interview people that work within that company, and really like get to know like what's great about the company, what surprised them about the company. So there's two, I guess, skill sets. You can either be very focused on the numbers and the data side of it, or you can be more thorough around the kind of, almost, I sometimes say to my team, you've got to be a little bit like a therapist or a psychologist. You're really like interviewing people and trying to draw the best out of them to try and find like interesting stories and interesting campaign ideas. You also need to be quite a good like writer. So you need to be able to take all of that information and be able to kind of identify patterns in what people are saying. so that we can go back to the client and say, look, we spoke to 100 of your people, and these are the 5 main themes that are really like important that you should, you know, push out in your advertising campaigns, and really like make sure that people know about you. And to tell those stories, you need to be able to take a lot of information and condense it down into kind of inspiring statements, and inspiring campaign ideas. So I always say to the team that if they've written something, they should go back to it and try and cut the word count by half and make it shorter and punchier, and a bit more impactful, because you can really kind of get across like good ideas if you take a lot of research and you make it really like short and punchy. And then our research team then work with the kind of creative project management team. So we hand over that research to the creative project managers, and they work with the designers, the kind of web developers and the films team to bring those stories to life in those mediums.
Yeah, probably to give it, I was going to say a bit because a bit about the structure of the creative team and the roles within that as well. So on the creative side, you've got the design team, you've got the films team, you've got the engineering, which is just a fancy word for tech, got a marketing team as well. So inside the design team, in terms of roles, we have people that focus on more of the kind of illustration and graphic side of things. So we have people that are illustrators, really talented, people that can draw really well. I like to think I'm a relatively designer, but I cannot draw at all. It's never a skill I've had. I'm so bad at it, which is good that we've got some really amazingly talented people in the team that can do that. Then also we have people that focus on print design. As you would imagine, that's starting to become a little bit more out of fashion, but more just like laying things out in terms of brochures, and quite a lot of those things could be digital brochures now. And then on the other side of that design team sits people that are in the kind of like UI, user interface, user experience, web design roles. So people that are focusing a lot more like digital side of design, designing websites, and they will be building like careers pages for our clients. So hopefully apple.com/careers, for example, would be designed by one of those designers. In the films team, it is an interesting part of our business. So we have the people that focus on shooting, so physically using cameras to shoot footage. Clearly, they're not able to do much of that at the moment. So they're looking forward to getting back out there in the world. And then on the other side of the team, you have people that edit everything. So editing videos together, and also people that focus on motion graphics, animation, and kind of special effects. So anything that can't be filmed can be recreated by a special effects artist. On the marketing side, we have people that focus on what we call brand activation. So online marketing, PPC campaigns, focus on all of the advertising channels. So they'll be doing Facebook marketing, Instagram marketing, and so on, influencer-based marketing, PR. And then on the engineering side of things, the tech team, people that focus on front-end development. So people that make a website from a design, or people that are on the back end side of things that are usually rather quiet and have their big headphones on most of the day, but they'll be focusing on all of the programming that goes on in the background to make all of our websites work and not break.
So if we're thinking about entry-level jobs into either of your teams, what kind of roles would you be looking at as people coming out of university or coming out to study into your teams? What kind of things would they be doing? I mean, it's so vast, there's so many different areas.
Yeah, sure, yeah. So I think, and I'll let Hattie talk a bit about research, because I think that research is more of a mindset. So you can come out with what we would maybe call like hard skills. And if you're really smart and really able, and you're really analytical, or you've done some form of study at school that you're interested in more long form writing or analysis, you probably could go into that without any hard skills. What I mean by hard skills, and I definitely don't mean hard skills to mean better skills, just different skills. If you're talking about junior roles in some of those teams that I just mentioned, say design or films, you would realistically need to have some experience in that. And that doesn't mean you've worked in another company before, because the great thing about creative is that you really can teach yourself. So I unfortunately spend most of my time speaking to clients and managing the team now, so I don't get the opportunity to much time in filmmaking anymore. But that was all of the skills that I taught myself when I was probably at the age of everyone in this group now. So I literally taught myself how to design from YouTube, taught myself how to use camera and how to develop and design a website just from the internet effectively. So that it's absolutely possible to do that yourself on your own. You don't necessarily need to have the like need experience to get experience, that sort of weird thing that people talk about a lot. But I think that if I was to hire someone even at a very junior level in the films team or the design team, I'd want to see some sort of a portfolio. And I think that's something that's really, really important for everyone to think about, is how you start building your own portfolio. If I don't really even look at CVs at all, and Hattie probably would take the mick out of me for it, but I hate looking at CVs because I think they're not representative of anything. You can't make yourself look good on a CV. It's literally just like text. So building your own portfolio of the type of work that you've done or the type of work you're interested in doing is so important, because you can impress someone through a really nice looking document. So if you're a designer, for example, and you've taught yourself how to do some designs, or you've done something at school, putting it in a nice document and showing what your thought process was and why you did it is really, really important. And it doesn't really matter necessarily how good you are at it. It's more the thought process. All of these skills can be taught. You just need to have the right mindset for it. But I think that we would need to see something for someone to join in at a junior role. Someone said, I would want to work in film, but I've never picked up a camera before. I think just because of the size of our business, we're not a massive company. We need people that can come in and be able to hit the ground running a little bit. So I guess some level of experience would be required, but not experience you need to get another company, something you can really do yourself.
That's really helpful. And actually, we did a magazine Zoominar last on Tuesday, and very much we talked a lot about how, and they do look at CVs, but how, you know, you need to stand out from the crowd with that as well. So yeah, I'm probably an exception to the rule. Definitely make your CV look good. I'm not giving you that advice. I just personally don't like looking at it. Not just boring text. If you're in a creative,
absolutely, yeah,
be creative.
Yeah. We had one one girl who she applied for an internship in our creative team, and she actually brought in her dissertation in which she'd made a wooden box for it, and she brought that in to show it to us, and that was like, we were so impressed. I think it's what you want to do is you want to really like impress people with your attention to detail, and use the application process as a way of showing that person that you have a very like unique view on the world, and getting that across. So for our team, I guess on the research side, you can, as an entry level, you can come in as a researcher or a kind of a data analyst, and the kind of skills that you need there are or not even skills, but the kind of mindset that you need to be interested about like asking questions and being curious, and being able to look at a brand or look at a product or look at something and kind of give your opinion on it based on kind of a little bit of research that you've done. So whenever we ask people to apply for jobs in the research team, we actually set them a task, and that's what we look at over the CV. We look at their kind of unique response to the task. And the task is always like, pick a brand or pick a company and tell us what you think of their careers page or their employer brand, and what you would do differently. And what we're really looking for when we ask that is not that someone can go and like download the entire company's history and all of the kind of stats about that company and play it back to you, because that's a bit boring. Like anyone can Google that and look at it on a Wikipedia page. What we're looking for is that section at kind of near the end that tells you exactly that person's view on it, and you want to basically sell yourself in that moment. So the interviewer or the person looking at your CV or your task is like, I have to have that person's brain, because no one else is going to give me that point of view on this product. So that's what we look for. I think that is the kind of main thing.
That's really interesting, and it'd be interesting to know, because Ben was obviously talking about, you know, you can learn yourself at home, whatever. Especially now, it would be good to set. A lot of people, I'm sure, will ask in the chat, what can we be doing now when we're stuck at home? So Patty, if you're on there, what can they be doing now in relation to that to get better at that?
Yeah, so things that you can do at home, and this is quite an interesting one because a lot of my team are on furlough at the moment, so they're actually at home, kind of, I guess, in the same position as everyone at the moment, like not able to work, but still wanting to like upskill themselves and learn about like, you know, how they can improve. So there's a lot of I guess like free online courses at the moment. Like a lot of companies, well, Google always runs a kind of like really great boot camp, so you can go in and do a lot of like digital marketing courses with them. Like all of the Google courses are free and they're great. I'm doing some of them at the moment as well. You can also, I guess, be dialing into, so there's a lot of things on Eventbrite and meetups at the moment that have all gone virtual. So you can dial into webinars like this. And what I'd really recommend is if you dial into those webinars, if there's an opportunity to get the details of the speakers, not that I'm like saying like you should message me after this, but like if there's someone that you listen to who's doing a webinar and that you find it really interesting, it's a really good idea. Just take their details and contact them and ask for their view on like either your CV or your portfolio. People are always going to be flattered, and unless they're a really like horrible person, they're always going to want to help giving advice or giving feedback on your CV or on your portfolio. So those are the main things that I would say. But Ben, any tips for you on the design side or the creative side?
No, I was just going to say, everyone feel free to message Hattie after. Like her getting us 30 messages. Yeah, I was going to say, you guys have probably heard someone say this before, and it sounds a bit like something you get a fortune cookie, but we will never get this time again. Like, this is such a strange time for everyone, and things aren't going to return to normality immediately. It's going to be a little while before it feels like it did before coronavirus. So people naturally will have more time at the moment to consider, think, learn. And really, if you come out the other side of this and you feel like you haven't spent that time learning something new, then you'll probably look back on it as a wasted opportunity. So to absolutely mirror what Hattie said, which is that figure out what it is that you want to do, you are most interested in, and just learn about it. And I think that especially at kind of the age that all you guys are, and thinking about how you would kind of get that first job and what you'd move into, it's quite tough to get into the creative industry as just a creative generally, because if you look at bigger agencies, they will hire people in at that what they will call like creative. So you'd be like a junior creative at say WPP, which was a big agency that Hattie mentioned. But like she saw, Hattie is probably the smartest person I've ever met, but she still wasn't able to get a job at WPP through their graduate scheme because it's really, really, really tough. And unfortunately, especially in those big agencies, seldom is it just about how good and smart you are. Sometimes it's about who your mum and dad are and who you know, which is really, really unfair, but that's just how a lot of those big agencies are structured. So I think realistically, if you can figure out a niche, something that you are the most interested in, let's say you have a passion film, for example, but you aren't necessarily going to be someone that is going to go and pick up a camera, or you're not necessarily interested in that, start thinking about how you could look at being a junior producer in the films industry, for example. Start thinking about researching companies in the film space. Who produces the films that you're interested in? How does that work? And who could you get in contact with? If it's on the design side of things, exactly the same. You don't necessarily need to be a designer to work in a design agency. There's people that are studio managers, project managers, people that are very, very involved in the creative side of things, but don't necessarily have their own skills. So if you have like a short-ish period of time now to spend a bit of time learning and researching, that doesn't mean get on YouTube and teach yourself how to use Photoshop. It could just mean understand the industry and build your commercial awareness a little bit more. So yeah, speaking to as many people as possible, asking as many people as possible is good. And I think that what this period is certainly going to change for us as a company is, I think everyone in our business who by the way aren't particularly old, like our average age in Wiser, I think they're still like 25. Which is obviously quite low. I don't really help much with that because I am 25 myself. But I think we have learned how to work from home in this period of time. I don't think anyone knew how to do that before. So I think generally people are going to be a lot happier after this period with webinars, giving out more of their information. I think people will be doing a lot more work on LinkedIn, and their personal brand, I think, is going to change things for the better. A lot of things will be moving very much virtually and online, which means the barriers to entry that you would typically see, which is really physical barriers, going to meet people, going to events, I think those things will not be happening so much in the next few months. So it's a good opportunity to capitalize on that stuff at the moment.
That's great. That's really, really good. And obviously, Ben, there are, as Hattie says, in her team, the skills are more thinking wise, and you can come in at more an entry level, and you said that you need to have some specific skills. But as a character in general, what do you look for in people and their characters to become part of your teams?
Like humility, bar absolutely none. Like if you're the smartest person in the room, never make anyone think that you're the smartest person in the room, because people won't like you. And especially in the creative industry, people become very personally attached to their own work. And I think that's natural. Like people put a lot of passion and effort into the things that they do, and being very, very humble and not trying to kind of push yourself at the front of any sort of situation is so important. And the kind of that then ties into how you take feedback as a person. So working in creative is really all about giving and receiving feedback, and it's almost like it's like a dance, if you like. Getting it right is very, very hard, but if you get it wrong, you can make yourself look very stupid. And what I mean by that is being able to take critical feedback from people and understand that they're doing it because they want you to be better and improve, and they want the whole environment to improve. If you can really understand that, but not just like understand the concept of it, but really, really feel it. If someone gives you direct feedback, and as long as they're not giving it in like a mean way, take that feedback on board and welcome it with open arms. And if you're the kind of person that's wired like that, then that would be the kind of person that I would look for. Someone that can take feedback and someone that is constantly looking to learn. And I think that let's take Hattie, for example. Like Hattie is very senior and wiser. Hattie has built a team that never existed before, but she's always up for taking feedback and receiving feedback from people. And she always comes across as one of the most humble people in the room, even if most of the time she is the smartest person in the room. And it's that kind of like way that you put yourself across is so important. So I think not wanting to, when building your own personal brand, building a portfolio is very, very important. But don't big yourself up more than you need to, because you'll get found out, and people don't really like those sorts of people, and that's not how you build a network. So yeah, I think humility is definitely the biggest thing that I look for, even past creative ability. If someone joins and they don't have a jot of creative ability, but they are what we call a wiser person, they're really, really real, they back themselves, they take ownership of all the things around them, they make lots of moves, and they expect more of themselves than the people around them. That's what we look for. It doesn't necessarily mean to be like a technical ability.
That's really interesting. Do you have any other things to add to that, Hattie? That's really interesting to know.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite an interesting one. I think what I found leaving school and then university is you kind of get trained to make everything sound really formal, and then you kind of get told that, you know, everything that you submit has got to be perfect, and it's got to, you know, be presented in a language that for me didn't really feel that natural. So what I do with the team now is, if we're analysing a brand and they're presenting work to me, or sometimes if they email it to me or they submit it in a written form, I'll actually get them to read it out. And if it doesn't sound natural in their, like the language that they use every day, then I tell them, I'm like, well, why are you saying it like that? Like, it's really important, if you're putting across your work, to just use the most like clear, simple language to get your point across. That's kind of what I look for in the team. The humility and the feedback thing is really also important, but it's about being brave enough to put an opinion across, and also know that sometimes, like, we go into rooms where we are the youngest company. You know, my title might be research director, but I've only been doing that for a couple of months, and I've only been in this industry a couple of years. So sometimes I'll be in a room full of men, and I'm like old, kind of like 50-year-old men, and I'm like, well, this is going to be a tough room to sell or to kind of convince. And you have to remind yourself that no one else in that room has your experience and your perspective on the world, and they wouldn't have invited you to be in that room, or they wouldn't have, you know, like agreed to the meeting if they weren't a little bit interested to hear what you have to say. And I wanted to just touch on a little bit on the interview process of, you know, if you don't get that job that you go for, it doesn't matter. You're going to get rejected from jobs. Like, rejection is just like a part of it, and you have to get through so many no's so that you can get to the yeses. But I think to take pressure off that, you know, you've got to get the job piece, really focus on getting to know the job interviewer as well as you can, and build a connection with the job interviewer. Because if you follow up the interview and be like, well, I'm really sorry, like I'm really disappointed to know that I didn't get the job, or something comes from that, but I was really interested in this piece of the conversation and I would love to like further that conversation with you or get your feedback on my CV, that will be a much stronger connection for you in the future than necessarily even the job. Well, that's what I've found.
It's almost like free networking. Like going for jobs shouldn't be a process of going somewhere and it being a no and then you just binning that relationship off. Absolutely. Like if you can build a network as you're going, that's so important. Naomi, we've got quite a few questions coming in the thread.
We have a lot of questions. Can I just pick up on one thing just before you start?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And if you guys want to just look through the questions and answer the ones yourself, that's brilliant. Two things is, do you still think that LinkedIn is a really good medium to get to know and research people? And two, a lot of our students may suffer from feeling that they don't have a reason to be in that room. You know, if they've gone into an environment that they've never been in before, especially people coming straight out of school. So you have given advice, but just that advice on that confidence of getting into that room, a big glass building, and feeling, I deserve to be here. You have touched on it, but anything more you can add to that?
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy to. I'll just do like a quick one on that. So I a lot of like what I suffer from, but also my team suffer from, is imposter syndrome of like, no matter how great our work is and no matter how like big the project is, we always feel like, oh, I don't know if this is good enough or if I'm good enough. And what I've started to tell my team a little bit is, if you can convince yourself or convert it into a little bit of like a game of like, you've just got to go in and have a go at this and see how it goes, that helps with the kind of like mindset of like, oh my God, this is terrifying. It's more like there's so many levels or so many times that I have to go into these environments until I feel like confident in them. And just almost like I create like a persona for myself and I send her into the room to do the presentation. And then she reports back to me like how it went, which I know makes me sound absolutely insane, but it does help. And then on the LinkedIn piece, absolutely like build up your, I guess, like your profile. Like you'll see on my LinkedIn, I have like descriptions and details of like everything I've done on there. I put all of the kind of times that I've done a creative course, or the times that I've like published an article, or even published an article on my LinkedIn. I always do that. And I like always am like connecting with the people who are suggested in my network, because you just never know like when that person, or you might publish something and someone sees it. And actually Wiser, LinkedIn is how I got my job at Wiser. I was messaged on LinkedIn. So yeah, I would definitely put that up.
Ben, have you seen any questions initially that you'd like to answer?
Yeah, well, I mean, to be honest, like we could, I don't know whether, Hattie, we just run through them, because what would you say has been your biggest project is the first one? I think that's probably one that we both answer.
Normally I do actually ask people myself, because there are so many, and I thought biggest project.
Well, yeah, well, I'm conscious of time, so I'm not going to go into it too much, but I think I'll give you two quick examples. So one is the biggest project that we've done, I think, and then the second is the biggest project that we're doing. So the first one, I'd say our biggest project to date has been the work that we did for Nike. So we helped Nike to hire digital people in Europe. So when we first met Nike, and Nike was always one of those brands that I like, worshipped. Like, I absolutely love Nike as a brand. I think it's arguably one of the best brands in the world. And when we first met them, we didn't think that they'd have a problem with anything really, at the very least, like hiring people. It turns out that it's actually really difficult for them to hire digital people. And what we mean by that is data scientists, developers, designers in the technical space, because they're not really set up as a brand to attract those sorts of people. If you think of Nike, you think of sportswear and shoes and Serena Williams and Tiger Woods and all those sorts of things. You don't think of data technology, but they're actually one of the biggest technology companies in the world, because they are one of the biggest companies in the world. They have a huge requirement for technology, and they have this saying behind the scenes, which is one of their goals, which is digital is the future of sport. So to create the future of sport, you have to really understand digital. So if you look behind all of the stuff that they're doing in sports, behind all of their stores, behind all of their innovations. There's so much technology that goes on. So we went in there, did a big research exercise in Amsterdam, and we then actually, Hattie and I presented back to the board in Lisbon all of our findings about what they should do to change their brand and change their business to attract digital people in a better way. And it was a really, really impactful project. I think in terms of like the amount of work that we put into it, there was, you know, there's quite a few 4 or 5 a.m. as me and Hattie in the office with surrounded by post-it notes like they were going out of fashion. But then going through that whole process and then presenting it to the most senior people in the business at the end was fantastic, and it was a really high impact project. And then I think the second one that I'll talk about is the one that we're doing right now. So we're actually helping Fraser's Group, and you'll know Fraser's Group if I say Sports Direct. And some of you might know Mike Ashley, who's quite a divisive character who owns Sports Direct. We're actually helping Sports Direct to change from what they are perceived as at the moment to what they actually are. So people probably don't know that Sports Direct also own Mulberry, Jack Wills, Game, and lots of other businesses as well. They've moved very much into the luxury fashion market, so they have a really, really negative perception at the moment, and we're helping them to change. We're helping them to do better internally. We're helping them with their employer brand. We were just at the start of that project, but they're a huge company. They turn over like £4 billion, something like that. So the opportunity for us, like the mountain that we see ahead of us, is so huge that we know that we're going to have such a big impact. So I think our biggest projects are always ones where we feel like we have the most impact, not ones that are like really big companies already have an amazing brand and amazing culture that don't really need us. It's the companies that really, really need our help is when that's the most enjoyable, I guess.
I'm going to jump on a thingy from Christine Lagua here, who says, how would you differentiate yourself from any other companies? So when you're talking to Nike, how did you differentiate yourself?
So I think what I would say to what I said in my first conversation with Nike was, you know, if you're looking to hire better people in any way, you need people that understand both sides of the coin. And when I talked at the start of this call about creative and recruitment, a lot of recruitment agencies, so people that just find people and put them into jobs, they don't understand brand, they don't understand creative, which are usually the reasons why you would go for a job. Like if all of you guys are researching companies, the very first thing you do is go on Google, look at the companies, you're online, you're on a website, you're watching videos. If those videos are bad, low quality, not inspirational, then you probably just write that company off in your head. So the shop window of a business is so important, and recruitment agencies just don't have creative people inside them, so they can't understand that. On the other side of the coin, creative only agencies, they don't understand the realities of recruitment, which is like people applying for jobs, people dropping out of jobs, people getting declined for jobs, people getting accepted for jobs, how all of that stuff works from a logistical perspective and a legal perspective. We really understand both sides. So our biggest differentiator is the fact that we really deeply understand the people who are our audience, and we understand how to make things that inspire those people at the same time.
Okay, so not everybody has done so well, will do as well as you, going straight from school and then doing something and setting up your own business. So those who are going to university and or are thinking of going to university, what kind of courses do you think would work with the kind of industry, well, the kind of jobs that you're looking at? If you want to
Hattie, as the only person that went to university, why don't you answer that one?
Well, I must do, yeah. So I guess for the research and insight side, we've got a real mixture in our team. So we've got people who studied English, we've got people who studied history, we've got people who studied psychology. We've got people who are also doing more like mathematical degrees, who sit more on the data side. So when it comes to research and insights, I would say pick a degree where you think you might have to process a lot of information and boil it down into like key findings or kind of like shorter essays. You just need to be able to demonstrate that you can do that funneling process. Doesn't really matter what the degree is. It can be history of art, it can be media studies, all sorts. Just showing like your thought process is important, and then I'll let Ben talk a little bit about the different courses you can do on the creative side. But I mean,
definitely, I think on that funneling point that Hattie said, I think one of the most difficult, when I think back to when I wrote like essays and stuff at school, one of the most difficult parts of that is the end. You get to the conclusion and the summary, and it's like, how do you come up with a really, really impactful conclusion that gives like key points, a summary of what you've talked about, and then like one sentence or finding at the end, and being able to take loads of information up here and turn that into slightly less information, and then slightly less information into something that's really small, like a creative campaign, an idea, or one sentence like that. that kind of technique and that ability can be learned across lots of different degrees, but they usually require, as Hattie said, like long form writing, things like that. On the creative side of things, like I would be lying if I said that degrees matter a little bit less to me. That's a little bit of bias because I didn't go to university, but I think the main reason is that it kind of depends. So if you're going to design, for example, most of the people in our design team, they did graphic design degrees. Graphic communications is another degree that I see. Loughborough is a great university for that. We have 2 people from Loughborough University. If you're on the technical side of things, people are doing things like computing, computer science, maybe even physics, to go into the kind of programming side of things. If it's general creative, I mean, I'm not too skilled up on all the different types of degrees that are on offer now, but I know that there's degrees that are tied in with agencies and there's specific universities for that. I think your typical what is a good university and what is a not good university is probably much more relevant for degrees like the ones that Hattie mentioned, so English and history and so on, whereas on the creative side of things there's lots of specialist universities, so there's a little bit more research to do in there. When you're at university, and this is some advice I can give, but purely from advice that has been told to me, I have absolutely no first-hand experience of this, but when you're in university and you're doing a creative degree, network. It is the best opportunity for networking, because a lot of these like universities that do creative degrees, art degrees, anything like that, there's usually like a community, and the tutors are usually ex-industry people. So the people that have worked in an agency before, the people that have worked in brand before, and if you can pick their brains and get a good relation with them, then you can start with a network, be able to put yourself into a position where you have already got jobs lined up for yourself once you leave university, for example. Or if you're not choosing to go to university and you choose to do an apprenticeship, for example, and there's loads of great degree apprenticeships out there where you might choose not to go to university, you go straight into a job, but you still get a degree at a partner university while you're doing it. So it's kind of a mixture, but because our areas are more, I guess, niche, if you're going to do design, then you've probably done a design degree. But again, if you've got an amazing portfolio, you've never been to university, then I'm looking at the portfolio every time.
That's really helpful, thanks. So Thomas Ward said, I did work experience at M&C Saatchi, which is product branding and advertising. How does employer branding and advertising you do differ from companies such as M&C?
Great question. M&C Saatchi are a great business. Funny story, our very first office when we founded Wiser actually was on Golden Square, which Thomas will probably know is right next door to M&C Saatchi. The office building that we're in doesn't even exist anymore. It's turned into some flats, I think, last time I walked through there. They're obviously like they're a big successful agency that was spun out of a much more typical creative agency or advertising agency, if you like. So in terms of how we differ to a company like M&C Saatchi, obviously they focus on, a company will come to M&C Saatchi and say, hey, we've got a new product. How do we sell that product? How do we position that product in the right way so that people buy the product? Now, if you take product out of that and put job/career in the place, it's exactly the same. It's just we focus on a different audience. So M&C Saatchi don't do employer branding, but if someone came to M&C Saatchi and said, hey, we have a job opportunity that we need to sell, or we are looking to hire people in this area, think of us like a product, then work your magic, then probably a lot of those big creative agencies would do more of that, but they don't. So that's why you have specialist agencies like us. So the advertising that we do differs. It doesn't differ in our process, but it just differs in our audience and how we get all of our insights together.
Jonathan, oh sorry, Hattie, were you going to say?
No, I was just going to say Ben is probably best placed to answer that regarding a portfolio, like what's the best platform. But I've seen a lot of people just use kind of like website platforms that you can use like through Wix or like something that you design yourself, or like our design lead, his Instagram is essentially his portfolio and it's beautiful. And one of our illustrators as well has a whole Instagram that's just based on his illustrations, and it's incredible.
I think people
Instagram's a really good way of doing that.
I think we are very aware, and we talk to people that, nowadays all of us can look up and see all your social personas, all your social profiles. So if Hattie's looking to hire somebody, she will look at your social profiles, and in doing so you have to be aware of that when you're going into the job market. You're looking at LinkedIn, don't put a ridiculous photo on there, put something that obviously that shows yourself, but if you're getting pissed with your mates or something, and the same is be aware of your profiles. in that
Yeah,
respect.
definitely. I think it, and it's past just making it look professional. I think it's making even more use of it. So using it, like Hattie said, as a bit of a platform. It sounds wrong. It sounds like it shouldn't be done, but realistically, what you said, Naomi, is absolutely bang on. Like, people will look at your social profiles when they're hiring you for a job. Guaranteed. Doesn't matter who the person is that's hiring. They could be the nicest person on the earth. They're going to do that because they want to know the person that they're going to be working with and that they're going to be relying on for so much stuff. So, like, I don't use my Instagram as just all my like photography. I do photography on the side, so that's that. But I kind of keep it as up to date as possible, because I know that if a client is buying from me, for example, they're probably going to look me up on the internet, and the first thing that comes up is my Instagram, and it's some nice photography. So it looks like I have technical ability, it looks like I have creative ability, it looks like I don't just use my Instagram for posting photos of my brunch or my cocktail. Like, I use it for kind of professional purposes. In terms of the things that are mentioned here, like Instagram, digital portfolio, blog, etc., I think focus on having if there is anything live on the internet, make sure that is good. Don't put any like half finished profiles online. Most of the applications that we get usually have like a PDF attachment, because primarily job applications happen through email addresses, or it's a form where you can attach something, or you just send it to someone. And usually if you can put together a PDF portfolio, it's really easy for someone to look up. There are other ways of doing that, is to use simple sites like Squarespace. Loads of free templates exist on there, making your own portfolio. It's actually like surprisingly scarily easy to make a really professional looking portfolio website these days, and just put on there the things that you've done, and then when someone clicks on it, some nice images of the work that you've done, your thought process, what your objectives were project. That's really, really important. I see quite a lot of portfolios where it's just like screenshots of what I did, and it just says company name, did this at school, or did this as part of my degree, and it's kind of like, even if it looks pretty, I don't really know what I'm going to be getting from that. So if you can look at it in the process of, this is the work that I did, this was the problem I was trying to solve, these were the objectives that I set myself, and then this is how I approach the project, just shows that you have that kind of like kind of thought process that would be good for a client of the agency or the company that's trying to hire you.
That's really, really helpful. We are near 8 o'clock. I hope we might be missing our clapping for NHS, but just quickly, what is your favourite part of your role? So Ben, you're in our screen. What's your favourite part of your role?
Oh, that's a good question. I think, if I can be annoying again, and I'm going to give you two answers. So I'll give you a selfish answer, and then I'm going to give you my proper answer. So my selfish answer is, my favourite part of my role is probably just my resting state, which is like filming or designing. Like, if I get the opportunity to design something or go on a shoot, we did a lot of international filming in the last couple of years, so been going to like Japan and India and loads of different cool places filming. Like, those sorts of parts are probably the most personally enjoyable things. But I think the proper answer is seeing people that we've brought on, trained and developed, do amazing things. As someone that leads a business and leads a team, is always going to be the best part of it, because I want my team to be able to do stuff better than I can. I want our clients to praise the people that we have brought on and that we've trained up, because that is the purpose of what we're trying to do. We're not just trying to make money as a company at all. We are trying to change the way people think about work. We are trying to create a home for young people to come and expect more of themselves and be excellent. So if someone comes on, they start maybe with a position of slightly less confidence, they grow, they learn, and then we can watch them go into a room for the first time and deliver a pitch and absolutely nail it, or do a client project on their own that's done completely independently. From like a manager and a leader perspective, like, there isn't really anything that gets better than that. Sounds a little bit soppy maybe, but it's probably true. Like, there's been some fantastic success stories inside the company. So when we can see that whole process end to end, you really know that you're, I guess, hopefully doing things right. So that's probably my favorite part from that perspective.
Really, really good. And Hattie, what about you?
My favorite part of it is when we've gone away and done all of the research, or we've kind of come up with all of the ideas, and we have to come back in and present it to the people who are going to make a decision, or that they've asked us to go and do this work. And there's like a little moment in the meeting where you see them change their opinion. And that, for me, really weird, but I get such a kick out of like knowing that we've gone in and made an impact. And the second part of it is when we start to see the results of our work. So for us, for example, like when we work with companies like Knight Frank, or like, you know, especially in the property industry where like diversity is a real, like, you know, they're trying to improve it. When we see the results off the back of like increasing the number of female hires, or increasing, you know, like that suddenly makes your work feel real. And then to add on to what Ben said, it's, you go from being really obsessed with how perfect you make your own work to then having a team and becoming totally obsessed with how their work excels. And that's a really, like, it's a really cool thing to watch. So yeah, feel very lucky. And also I love, not to kind of say this because he's on the call, but like, you need to find someone in a creative environment. Like Ben and I have the research and kind of like language side, and Ben like kind of complements that with the creative thinking, and you need to find someone that you can kind of spar with or like throw ideas around, and that is really rewarding. So even if you start practicing that now among your friends or just people you're in school with who you really like respect the opinion of, it's a good route to take.
Thanks, Hattie. Now I'm just going to leave on this. Now, as Ben and Hattie spoke earlier, they have their recruitment side of the arm, and they have something called Wiser Graduates. And there are probably quite a few people on here that will be going to university just now, and that could be interesting. So do you want to just, Ben, would you just like to do a little bit of plug for the Wiser Graduate side of things?
Always happy to do a plug, yeah, of course. I think probably what's good for me to talk about, Naomi, is something I was talking to you about before we started the call. So yeah, Wiser Graduates is the side of the business where we look at placing the best graduates in our clients. And we also run a lot of early careers programs for clients. We have a whole team of people that focus on bringing people onto graduate programs into companies, and we manage that whole process end to end for businesses. I think probably the most interesting thing and the most relevant thing is going to be the thing that we call our Wiser Academy. And all of you guys, maybe not in your first year, although we're going to probably be extending it to first year students, could look at joining that. So it's effectively like you could think of it as a campus ambassador program, but with all of the bits that those things usually miss out filled in. So usually your campus ambassador program is like you work for Spotify, for example, you hand out leaflets and you get paid. Wiser Academy is more of like a network of students that we have on the ground, and we connect them with our clients. We get them trained up by our clients. We run an academy training day where we bring down brands like Just Eat, Knight Frank, WorldPay, whoever it is that we're working with. And we get people from those companies to talk directly to you guys, which is a great opportunity for networking. And then throughout your academic years, we effectively set you tasks of things that you can do. And that could be referring in your friends, older siblings, friends, people in year above, below, whatever, to jobs at our clients. Or it could be acting as like a survey panel for Hattie's team. So we get so much out of our Wiser Academy network for when we ask them a question, which is like, here's a company that we're looking at working with. What do you think of them? Go on their careers website, rip it apart, and send us all of the punditry for it. And they also do things like set us up with access to lectures, set us up with events. And from a business perspective, that makes it a lot easier and a lot cheaper for us to get in touch with lots of different students. So we've kind of thought about what can we do to support students before they get a job, which is what Wiser Graduates focuses on. Obviously, we're only interested in you once you can actually get a job, but the Wiser Academy focuses on people that are throughout their university and training those people up and getting them connected to Wiser. And quite a few people that have been in the Wiser Academy actually end up joining the company. Some of our most talented people have come through that process. They've been in the academy at university. They obviously already know our brand very well. They've had commercial awareness training that other people haven't had, and they've just literally hopped straight into the company after that. We've already got a job waiting for them. So I'd encourage you guys to look out for that and apply for that when all the applications go live. Obviously now things are a little bit out of kilt, but yeah, if you search up Wiser Academy or follow us on social media, you'll see all of that stuff.
That's really great. Thank you. This has been so fascinating. It's been our most popular Zoominar yet, which is great. So I know that people will have taken so much from it, from so many different areas, be it, you know, graphics or film or more copy and creative. So it really has been fascinating. I've got most people's information on chat. So you guys, anyone who's got any questions, please do email me and I can ask, I'm sure, Patty or Ben or whatever. But it really is brilliant, and I have recorded it.
And Naomi, I was just going to say as well, like, I'd be more than happy for you to hand out my email list. And if anyone in this group wants to send me an email, it's just ben@wearewiser.com. if you need any advice or want to ask any questions at any stage, I can't promise I'll get back to you in 30 minutes. It's quite busy at the moment, but I'll definitely come back to you and give you any advice if I can.
That's really helpful. Thank you so much. Thank you. And thanks everyone for spending their time. And we can probably get in a little bit of a crap for the carers, but thank you again. That really has been really insightful. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
You're very
Thank you for your time, guys.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye bye. Bye bye.
See you later.